Okay, before we do start, can you also promote Jennifer Burke?
Yes.
Thank you so much. So at this point, what I'll do is I'll step behind the scenes a little bit, and Mark and Easter, I'll turn it over to you to get us started when you're ready.
And Easter, you go first.
Okay. And Pablo, I'm going to have you translate this first part that I'm going to say. And then once you translate, I will then move you over to the Spanish channel.
Great.
Great. I'd like to ask the interpreter currently on the Spanish channel to commence translation of the meeting. Live translation can be heard on the Spanish channel. To join the Spanish channel, click on the interpretation icon on your Zoom toolbar. It looks like a globe. Once you join the Spanish channel, we recommend you shut off the main audio so you clearly hear the Spanish translation.
Bueno, bienvenidos a esta reunión. Interpretación en vivo estará disponible y se podrá abrir a través del canal de español. Para cambiar al canal de español, haga clic en el icono de interpretación, que ahora aparece como un globo terráqueo. Una vez se una al canal de español, también se recomienda que apague el audio primario para que solamente escuche la interpretación al español.
Thank you, Pablo. And I will go ahead and move you over to the Spanish channel, and then we will get started momentarily.
Well, good evening and welcome to the third community meeting for the City of Santa Rosa's Water Supply Alternatives Plan, which is focused on exploring Santa Rosa's water future and increasing the city's water supply resiliency and reliability. I'm Mark Milan with Data Instincts, and I'll be moderating and facilitating tonight's community meeting. I want to thank you all for joining us. As a reminder, tonight's presenters, panelists, and members of the public, please speak slowly and very clearly to ensure the interpreters can convey all of tonight's content in Spanish. I'd like to introduce Easter Ledesma, who will provide additional information about how to participate in tonight's meeting. Easter?
Thank you, Mark. As community members join the meeting, you will be participating as an attendee. Your microphone and camera will be muted. Only today's panelists will be viewed during the meeting. The City of Santa Rosa is committed to creating a safe and inclusive environment free from disruption. Hateful speech or actions will not be tolerated. Everyone is expected to participate respectfully or they will be removed. If necessary, we will also immediately end the meeting. This meeting is being recorded and will be placed on the city website following the meeting. At the end of the presentation, Mark will open up the meeting for public questions and comments.
Thank you, Easter. Once again, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Your participation and input are important to the city as we discuss Santa Rosa's water future. This is our second community meeting on this topic. In the first community meeting on October 26th, we provided information about Santa Rosa's water use and water supplies, its improvements in water use efficiency, and the impacts of droughts, and the project scope of work, our goals, and approach. In the second community meeting on January 25th, we reviewed the goal statement and the list of proposed water supply options for the study and the study criteria for assessing the supply options. Links to the video recordings and presentation slides for both of those first two meetings are available on Santa Rosa's Our Water Future webpage at srcity.org/ourwaterfuture, and it's in the past meetings sections. So tonight is actually our third community meeting, and we'll focus on the results of the study and some possible portfolios or mixes of water supply options that can help achieve the water supply reliability goal. To start us off, though, we'll be having some opening comments by Santa Rosa's Water Director, Jennifer Burke. And after that, I'll provide an overview of the agenda and topics that we plan to cover. Director Burke?
Thank you, Mark, and good evening. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. As Mark mentioned, this is our third community meeting to discuss our water future. And I greatly appreciate those of you that have taken the time to not only attend and participate in the first two meetings, but who are also here to attend the meeting this evening. So why are we here for this meeting this evening? As you are aware, this winter we've received much needed rain to replenish our water supply reservoirs, which is great news. However, we've had 3 droughts since 2005, and climate change models predict we're likely to continue to see frequent and perhaps even more severe droughts in the future. So with this in mind and planning for the future of our community, Santa Rosa Water is considering the best options for expanding and diversifying our water supply. This will help us mitigate some impacts of future droughts, will help prepare us for sudden emergencies that might be caused by earthquake or other disasters, and have a more resilient and reliable water supply. As Mark mentioned, we had our first community meeting back in October, providing a lot of background information and received community input on our goal and potential water supplies that we wanted to study. We had our second community meeting in January and provided an update of the input we received and shared the revised water supply goal, water supply options that we plan to study, and criteria for the study. And as also was mentioned, both of these meetings were recorded and you can visit them anytime at our website on srcity.org/ourwaterfuture. So tonight we are really excited to share the results of the water supply alternative study with you, and we'll allow plenty of time for questions and comments. We look forward to your input and your suggestions as we go forward with this critical project for our community. Thank you again for attending, and I look forward to your questions and feedback. And with that, I'll hand this back over to Mark to start with our presentation.
Great. Thank you, Director Burke. Now this evening, we'll provide an update on the project progress and share with you the results of the water supply options study. During the presentation, we will provide opportunities for you to ask the panel questions and make comments and offer ideas that you may have. After all the presentations have been made, there will still be time for additional input, so don't worry. Our presenters tonight include the following staff from Santa Rosa Water: Colin Close, who's a Senior Water Resources Planner; Katie Cole is a planner for Woodard and Curran; Xavier Iris is the technical advisor for Woodard and Curran. And in addition to that, we have other project team members and city staff available to answer any questions as needed. Now, tonight's agenda includes background information, project update, what's been accomplished so far, the study results, and the potential water supply portfolios, which are like mixes of water supply options that can achieve the water supply resiliency goal. And of course, we'll cover next steps. Now, as I mentioned previously, you will have opportunities to provide input at various points during and after the presentation. We welcome your questions, comments, and suggestions. And to allow as many participants to speak as possible, each person will be limited to 2 minutes. If there is time remaining after everyone has had a chance to contribute, then you will have an opportunity to comment again if you wish. I would like to now introduce Colin Close, the city's Senior Water Resources Planner and the project manager for this effort. Colin will present a brief bit of background information, and following his presentation, Katie Cole from Woodard and Curran's team will present the project progress and introduce the team who will present the results. Colin?
Thanks very much, Mark. Good evening, everyone. I'll cover information that we have covered in the first 2 workshops. So if you attended in the past and this seems familiar, you're right. You've seen this information before. We wanted to provide it just in case some new folks are joining us and may be interested in why we're doing this project. This is an aerial photograph of the city of Santa Rosa. And you can see that we're fairly developed. We have 176,000 residents. And the city's water department delivers about 6.3 billion gallons of water per year for our urban customers. And that does not include some recycled water that we provide to some agricultural customers on the west side. We have 3 sources of water, and I'll describe those in just a moment. We also have 23 reservoirs. These are above ground storage tanks, very large tanks. Water reaches our customers through about 600 miles of drinking water pipe. Most of that runs underneath the street. So you drive over it every day without even realizing it. We also have about 600 miles of sanitary sewer pipe. And that takes wastewater from businesses and homes, schools and churches, and it flows to the west to reach our Santa Rosa Regional Water Recycling Site. We also receive wastewater from Cotati, Roanoke Park, Sebastopol, and the Southwest Sanitation District. So altogether, we recycle about 7 billion gallons of water each year. Most years, all of that water is reused, either for agriculture or for urban landscapes, or it's sent up to the geysers where Calpine pumps it deep underground, where there are still some hot lava beds, and it generates steam. And that steam is used to create clean electricity. So that's a little bit about Santa Rosa and our water. Our 3 sources of water include water from Sonoma Water. That's a water wholesaler. They sell water to a lot of the cities in our area. And that's most of our water supply. We also produce water with our own city wells. And there's a little bit of the recycled water that's used within the city in the urban setting. So altogether, almost 10.3 billion gallons of water is available to us when we have average rainfall. We've never used that much, but that's what's available to us when we have a normal amount of water supply. Sonoma Water gets its water from the Russian River system, and it's stored in Lake Sonoma. So that's the photo you see there is Lake Sonoma. The water's released from Lake Sonoma. It enters the Dry Creek, and that runs into the Russian River. And downstream near Forestville, they take water out of the river about 80 feet below the bottom of the river. So it's naturally filtered through gravel, sand, clay, silt. So the water's very clean, very high quality water. So that's a little bit about our 3 water supply sources. And this helps you see a snapshot of how water is used. If we look back over almost the last 10 years, from 2014 to today, the highest water use year in that time period was 2020. So this shows you how our water was used just before this recent drought. You can see most of it is used by our residential customers, almost 7 gallons out of 10. And then about 2.5 gallons out of 10 is used for our commercial, institutional, and industrial customers and all of their irrigation. And then not quite 1 gallon out of 10 is used for non-revenue purposes. So that's for things like fighting fires within the city limits, flushing our water pipes, our big mains that run underneath the roads, testing our fire hydrants, and then also any leaks that we have in our own system. So that's our water use. And then again, you can see the water sources, and you can see most of it comes from Sonoma Water, 93%, and then some from our city wells and some from recycled. So that's a snapshot of our water sources and how water is used in the city of Santa Rosa. How does that compare to the past? Let's take a look. This chart shows total water use, including that non-revenue water that I mentioned before, back to 1990 through 2022. And you can see water use has decreased over time. 1990 was a drought year. 2020 was just before the drought hit and had an impact on our local water supply. You can see in 2020, we used 14% less water. 2004 was our highest water use year, and we used 20% less water in 2020. And over this period of time from 1990 to 2020, the population increased 57%. So we're using less water with quite a few more people. This is largely because we've had water use efficiency programs for over 30 years, helping customers use water wisely. And we have been an early adopter of state regulations and building codes that help new development be as water efficient as possible. So this is good news. But we don't always have average rainfall. So what are we going to do when we have drought? If you've lived in the area for a long time, you know that we called for water conservation. We asked customers to cut back their water use 3 times since 2005. There was a drought in 2007 to 2009, 2014 to 2016, and then the recent drought that we just experienced. So during normal rainfall years, we have more than enough water for all of our customers. But when we have a drought, we do tend to experience water shortages. This picture gives you a snapshot of how severe this most recent drought was. The green line shows the amount of water that's stored on average in Lake Sonoma in a 30-year time period from 1992 to 2021. The dotted black line shows you the lowest month of storage at any time in that period. And the red dashed line is a warning line. If we go below 100,000 acre feet of storage in Lake Sonoma, the state can require that Sonoma Water cut back how much water it delivers to Santa Rosa and other water contractors by 30% or more. The blue line shows just how close we came to that 100,000 acre foot mark in 2021 and then in 2022 during this past drought. It's the second driest drought on record in our area. So this is a big concern to us because we know climate change is likely to show us having droughts more frequently and or more severely as we move forward in time. So we want to be prepared to provide additional water supplies for our customers. If we had that 30% reduction in water supply, here's a snapshot of what it would look like. So the gray bars are how much water we expect our customers would need going into the future. And this gray bar includes population growth, more housing and development, more businesses and schools, more churches and synagogues, all of these things, growth over time. So that's what we expect the amount of water our customers would need. The blue is how much water we would have available if we had what we call a stage 5 shortage. And that's when we would have 30% less water than the actual demand for water. And those are those times I've talked about previously when we've had shortages in the past. We've asked our customers to cut back. We've never had to ask for a 30% shortage. That's a pretty severe situation. That would require rationing water on a parcel by parcel basis. So that's a pretty serious condition, and we want to avoid being in a condition where having such a severe drought puts us in a place where we wouldn't have enough water and we would have to ration. So we've done lots of planning efforts over the years. If you are interested, you can read or learn a little bit about those in the recording from our first community webinar. It lists a lot of the planning activities we've done over the years. But with climate change, what we realized is we need to have some more water supply alternatives in place. So this project was started last year, and the goal is to improve our water supply resiliency and reliability for severe droughts and any sort of major emergency that could occur. And the approach is to study a wide range of water supply options and then develop a plan that will help us become more resilient. So the key questions this project is focused on include how much new water is the right amount. The more new water we develop, the more expensive it can be. So we need to find a balance. We need the right amount of water. We need to think about what supply options should be studied. There are a lot of different ways that you can increase water supplies. What are the right ones to study? And what criteria should we use to study each of those different options? So tonight, you're going to hear some of the answers to these questions because we're going to tell you about the study results. Then we're going to be working with our consultant, Woodard & Curran, to look at which mixes of options are not only the most feasible, but when put together, packaged together, give us the best path forward to achieving our resiliency goal. We call these portfolios. So in other words, there may be 3 or 4 different ways to achieve our goal. What makes the most sense for Santa Rosa? And then lastly, we'll be developing a plan, and our final community meeting will remind you at the end of this presentation, but that'll be in August. We'll tell you what our draft plan is, and the plan will be adaptive. So it will include all of the most feasible water supply options and those portfolios and those different mixes, and it'll talk about how the city could consider proceeding. Any work that would be done in the future would require additional study and work. We would need to make sure we comply with all environmental regulations. We would need to make sure we have adequate funding. All of these other steps would have to be in place. We would need permits. There would be a public process. So the plan is not simply a checklist of what we need to do, but it's a strategy and it's a policy document that will help guide us as we take each step forward. But any project, again, that does get developed would have to go through all of the normal public processes. So to do this project, we hired Woodard & Curran after a very competitive process, and we asked them to help us in 4 key areas. We wanted them to engage a wide range of stakeholders, and to my estimate, there's probably been about 75 people who have contributed to where we are at this point so far. We also wanted their help setting objectives, identifying what is that right goal? What's the right amount of water? What is the right list of supply options we should consider. How do we compare those against each other? That's the criteria and the study methods. And then once we've studied those, develop those portfolios and help us draft a plan. So you can see we've come a long way through the list of to-dos, and we'll be updating you all of that and giving you a little bit of a peek at what those portfolios might be like. And then again, in August, we'll invite you back to talk about the draft plan. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn this over to Katie Cole, who's the project manager for Woodard and Curran. And Katie's going to cover the project progress to date and elements of the study and where we are at this point. So Katie, let me go ahead and turn it over to you.
Super, thanks, Colin. Good evening, everyone. As Colin mentioned, I'm Katie Cole with Woodard and Curran. I'm the project manager for the Water Supply Alternatives Plan. So we'll start off tonight with a quick project update. So this is an overall look generally at the timeline of the project, which we've broken up into kind of these 4 key phases, represented generally by the 4 circles that you see here. So we began in the fall with establishing the planning foundation, the goals, criteria, methodology, and supply options. We reviewed these during the first 2 community meetings, as has been mentioned. That information was used to conduct a feasibility analysis, which we will be reviewing with you tonight. And then from here, we'll begin to prepare the Water Supply Alternatives Plan itself and work through the fall of this year to bring it to the Board of Public Utilities and the Santa Rosa City Council. Next slide. So since we kicked off the project last year, as Colin mentioned, we've met with quite a few folks. We've had 3 working sessions with the water team, which is composed of city staff. We've had 2 community meetings and 3 stakeholder group meetings. We also held a study session with the city's Board of Public Utilities. And we have also used all of the comments and information that we've gathered from these meetings to inform the feasibility analysis that I'll present to you tonight. So now we're going to move into the supply options that were considered as part of this project. Next slide. Generally speaking, water supplies, new water supplies can come from a number of places, all of which were included in the analysis. This includes things like groundwater, purified, recycled water, non-potable, so not drinkable recycled water, desalination, surface or stormwater, and water saved through conservation and efficiency. And I'll walk through each of these in the next few slides. So first up, groundwater. Groundwater is water that is held underground in the soil or in the pores and crevices in between the rocks underground. Projects that could be considered include constructing new groundwater wells to access additional groundwater, or constructing new wells that can both extract new groundwater and store excess surface water when it's available for later use. So both putting in new water and taking new water out. This type of well configuration is called aquifer storage and recovery, or shortened to ASR. Purified recycled water is recycled water that undergoes advanced treatment. So one type of project might be to construct a treatment facility to purify existing recycled water that is first added to the groundwater or surface water before it's used. This is referred to as indirect use. Another option would be to add that purified water directly to the drinking water system. This is referred to as direct use. Desalination involves removing salts and other impurities from seawater, which I think is how most people think about it. But desalination can also be removing salts from brackish water sources. So projects may include either building a treatment facility to produce drinking water from ocean water, or from that brackish water, such as salty groundwater. Surface water includes water from rivers, streams, lakes, ponds, or other above ground reservoirs. One type of project might be constructing new surface water storage or modifying existing surface storage to store additional stormwater. Conservation and efficiency, Colin talked about this earlier, includes short-term efforts to use less water and longer-term improvements in water use efficiency. So this includes things like rebates for customers, incentives, workshops, or other technical assistance. As Colin mentioned, Santa Rosa has already included many of these strategies to support its water supply portfolio, but there absolutely could be additional opportunities to explore. So in developing the supply options for analysis, we were really focused on a few key considerations. The first, we wanted to see really a diverse range of options. We also wanted to include both city and regional projects if there were other partners outside of the city of Santa Rosa that we could join with. We also wanted to make sure we included expanded efficiency incentives above and beyond what the city is currently doing. And finally, we wanted to incorporate input from the water team, the stakeholder group, the Board of Public Utilities, and the community that we've been hearing over the last 9 months since we started this project. So factoring all of this in, there were 18 options that underwent initial assessment. You'll see those on your screen. There were 5 groundwater options that included things like new wells, conversion of existing emergency wells, and other regional partnerships. There were 6 purified water options that included both indirect and direct use. There's 1 non-potable recycled water option, 2 desalination options, 3 stormwater options, and of course, 1 related to expanding water conservation and efficiency. So Mark, before we get into the feasibility analysis and results, I want to see if there's any questions or comments from folks.
Sure. Thank you, Katie. So now we'd like to hear from you about the information that's just been presented, and we welcome your questions and input. However, before we begin, I'd like to ask Easter to review how you can participate. Easter?
Yes, thank you, Mark. Anyone wishing to ask a question, make a comment, or offer ideas can raise their hand in Zoom. Individuals participating in the meeting by telephone can dial *9 to raise their hand. We ask those listening on the Spanish channel but wishing to make a public comment to turn off, leave the interpretation entirely at the time you hear your name called, so you join the main channel to make your public comment heard and translated into English. The icon may now look like a circle with an ES in the middle and the word Spanish underneath. You can then rejoin the Spanish channel at the conclusion of our comment to continue listening to the Spanish channel. We will then call on community participants one by one who have their Zoom hand raised. When it is your turn to speak, your microphone will be unmuted. Once you have asked your question or shared your input, your hand will be lowered and your microphone muted, so our panelists may respond to your question or comments. To allow as many community participants as possible, each person wishing to speak will be limited to 2 minutes. If we still have time after everyone has had a chance to contribute, then you are welcome to raise your hand again and to speak a second time.
Right, Easter, are we ready for anyone to ask a question at this time or provide a comment?
We are ready, and I am looking in the Zoom room and I do not see any raised hands. And just a reminder, if you'd like to make a public comment, you can raise your hand in Zoom and then we will unmute you, or if you're calling in, you can dial *9 to raise your hand.
And do we have any raised hands, or looks
We
like
do not.
not?
We do not
Okay.
have any raised hands.
All right, great. Then maybe we could proceed then to the next segment.
Sounds great. Thanks, Mark. So this next section of the presentation will be going through the feasibility analysis and evaluation results. So this slide shows the overall steps in the study methodology. Before we began detailed analysis, we started with that initial list of supply options that I presented on the screen earlier, and conducted a screening analysis to identify what we call any non-starter options. So these were ones that were either not cost effective or what we call scalable. Scalable or scalability refers to how much water the city could get from that option now and how much it could possibly get in the future. So projects that could have that scalability component were prioritized. So once those options that were either not cost effective or scalable were set aside, the final list of options could then be analyzed and scored using the evaluation criteria. This slide shows the original 18 options and then the 11 that were removed during the screening process. So the screening process involved the use of a screening tool that helped answer some questions around that cost effectiveness and scalability. Most of these were actually removed because they were not seen as cost effective. So the screening tool, what it ultimately did was help to retain supply options that were highly cost effective and scalable. It also kept options that further diversified the city's current water portfolio. Those are options like stormwater and purified water with a satellite treatment plant. The screen list of options includes both city and regional projects, and includes aggressive efficiency incentives to reduce demand over time. Finally, the list of screened options is consistent with the input that we've been hearing from the water team, our stakeholder group, the Board of Public Utilities, and you all during these meetings. Of the original 18 supply options, there were 7 that were shortlisted to undergo more detailed analysis. These are up on your screen and include adding additional extraction groundwater wells, converting emergency groundwater wells to full-time production wells, adding aquifer storage and recovery groundwater wells. So those are the wells that can put water in and take water out of the ground. Satellite direct potable reuse, which involves constructing a new treatment facility to treat water before putting it directly into the drinking water system. The 5th option, a regional direct potable reuse project at the Laguna treatment plant. This would mean adding additional treatment at that treatment plant to support this regional project to produce drinking water. 6th supply option is storing stormwater in the underground aquifer. And finally, increasing water use efficiency to reduce demands. For the evaluation itself, 8 criteria were used to score the supply options. Each criterion was assigned a weight that corresponds to a score multiplier. For example, the criterion equity was assigned a high weight with a multiplier of 3. City control and interagency coordination was assigned a medium weight with a multiplier of 1. This means that the score for equity would be multiplied by 3, whereas the score for city control would be multiplied by 1. This table shows the results of the scoring. All 7 projects were assigned a score for each criterion. The sum of that total is shown in the second to last row, that first blue row, in total unweighted score. Once the weights for each criterion were applied, each project then had a total weighted score. So what this process shows is that without the weights, the first 3 columns and the last column, so these are the supply options of adding extraction wells, converting emergency wells, the city aquifer storage and recovery wells, and the efficiency programs. They all scored quite closely, right? There's just a 1-point difference between those 4. When you add in the criterion weights, it becomes, there's a more clear distinction between these supply options. So the bottom row shows that there is now a 9-point difference between the 4 options. So Mark, again, I want to see if there's any questions or comments.
Yeah, that was quite a bit of information. Let's see if anybody would like to raise their hand to ask a question, or if you have a comment. And Easter will let us know.
Yeah, just as a reminder, anyone wishing to ask a question, make a comment, or offer ideas can raise your hand in Zoom in the raising hand feature. Individuals participating in the meeting by telephone can dial *9 to raise their hand. And then we ask those listening on the Spanish channel but wishing to make a public comment to turn off leave interpretation entirely at the time you hear your name called. So you join the main channel to make your public comment heard and translated into English. All right, we do have some raised hands.
Great.
Robin, I will unmute you. Just one moment. Okay, Robin, you may start. You should have the ability to unmute yourself, Robin.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. My question has to do with the conservation option, and I wanted to be sure you're considering the fact that a lot of the conservation activities that were implemented this last drought will remain in place. Like I'm still doing all of them continually, even though we're not in a drought situation, which means you're not going to get the same return as you did in the previous conservation activities. So I just wanted to make sure you're taking that into consideration. Thank you.
Katie or Colin, you want to address that?
Katie, if you like, I'd be happy to share the city's perspective on that. And then if you have something to add, that'd be terrific.
Absolutely.
All right. So Robin, good point. There's even a name for that. It's called demand hardening. And after each of the last 3 droughts, we have seen a permanent reduction in water use. The way we measure it is gallons per person per day. And we can look at that based on all of our water used divided by population. We can narrow it in and look at just residential use by population. But what you're describing is a known phenomenon in the water industry. We do see this. So what we have looked at for the efficiency programs are the types of programs that go over and above the habits people have. So for example, one option that is studied in this is providing toilets at no cost to customers with a professional installation included. So having a licensed contracting plumber work for the city to then go ahead and install toilets that are use less water than the state standard requires. They're 0.8 gallons per flush. And they have air assist, which means that while 0.8 gallons doesn't sound like much, with a little bit of air assistance, pressure to that water in the tank, it does work very well. It moves solids very, very effectively. Another program would be to encourage turf to be replaced with low water use landscaping. We've seen probably 6 or 7% of the turf in our city converted to low water use landscaping through our programs. There's probably some other folks who've done it voluntarily without getting a rebate. But what we could do with this as a program is we could increase the rebate amount above and beyond what we normally could afford because we're doing it as a water supply project, and encourage large commercial sites in particular to get rid of their turf that's only used for decoration. Those projects save about 3 times as much water as getting rid of turf at residential sites. So we think that by targeting those sites, we may be able to get businesses interested. But sometimes it's difficult to come up with the capital upfront or to have a good business case. But with a rebate that's high enough, we can show them the return on investment and how it pays for itself in a fairly short period of time. So really appreciate what you brought up because it's always on our mind as well. And it is in fact one of the reasons we're looking at new water supplies and not simply at conservation. If we had a catastrophic emergency, conservation's great, but it doesn't provide water for catastrophic emergency, like an earthquake or something along those lines. And if we had a very severe drought, we would probably not allow irrigation except for perhaps trees. And so, you know, it's important that we have other ways in addition to conservation. We need additional water to help make sure we have sufficient water supply for our community. But let me ask Katie if you have any thoughts that you wanted to add to that.
I don't, Colin. Great answer. I just want to say, Robin, thank you for bringing that up because we do talk generally about demand hardening, but it's always kind of nice to put a face to it. So I appreciate that comment.
Great. Easter, do we have any other hands raised?
We do. We have a comment from Karen. Karen, you should have the ability to.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I was wondering if you are making this this event, a recording of this event available to the public, because I missed the beginning and I would like to listen to it.
Yes, we are recording this and it will be made available. And also, if you didn't know, the 2 prior community meetings have also been recorded and they're on the website at srcity.org and /waterfuture. So yes, they'll be available.
Yeah, our water future as in OUR, our water future. Yeah, those are available as well as a copy of the slides for both of those previous meetings. And we'll do the same for this one as well. Thanks, Mark.
And did you have any other question or comment?
I was just curious to know whether the option to somehow save more rainwater from going into sewers during heavy rains was considered a strong option.
Katie or Colin?
Well, I'll take a first stab because I want to talk about managing rainwater generally. And then I think, Katie, if you can talk about the surface water piece a little bit. So yes, Karen, really good question. In terms of rainwater, the city was an early adopter of best management practices for low impact development. And that's focused on new development needing to be constructed in such a way that when rain falls on that site, to the greatest extent possible, it stays on that site and seeps into the ground rather than flowing to the curb and gutter. And where rainwater goes in Santa Rosa stormwater, when it runs off from the curb and gutter and it goes into a drain, it goes to our creeks, not our sewer system. So it feeds all of the creeks and tributaries that you see throughout Santa Rosa that flow to the west side to the Laguna de Santa Rosa. And so the less rainwater that flows there without first seeping into the ground, the better, because it does have a chance to get cleaned naturally. If it sinks into the soil and seeps down into the groundwater, there are natural processes that occur that help make sure that that water is as clean as possible So that's healthy for the Laguna because it will flow there eventually, either as groundwater or as surface water. So we have that in place as a city, but in terms of a water supply option, I'm going to toss it back to Katie. And I know, Katie, we're going to talk more about this option, but I just want to give you a chance to address that piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Karen, great question. We do look at capturing stormwater. That is one of our supply options. As Colin mentioned, the way that it kind of works now, flowing into the groundwater, we get the benefit of, you know, what I'll call natural treatment as it filters through the layers of the soil. If we were to capture it at the surface and put that water towards drinking use, we would need to treat it, which would come with, you know, the costs associated either with building a new treatment facility or adjusting our current treatment plant to be able to accommodate those additional flows. Storage is also going to be another component of that. So long story short, yes, it was absolutely considered as part of our work here.
Great, thank you, Katie. And Karen, if hopefully that addressed your question. And if you don't have another one, I'll go to Easter and see if there's anyone else who has their hand raised.
We do not have any more hands raised at this time. Oh, I
Okay.
apologize. We have Robin has her hand raised.
Okay, let's hear from Robin again.
Hello again. I was looking at my water bill and it's $6 for my water, $14 for a fixed charge, and about $40 for sewage. So when people reduce their water use, they don't see really much of a reduction in the cost of their bill each month. I was wondering if you considered charging more for the water. Of course, you'd have to take into account maybe having a sliding scale so the low-income people didn't get hit the hardest, but just wanted to raise that as a question.
Colin,
Yeah,
do you want to
yes.
address that?
Yeah, happy to, Mark. Thank you. And Robin, thanks so much for that. So couple of thoughts. We do a rate study every few years. So a rate study is coming up and there'll be bill inserts. So if you're interested in keeping your ear to the ground on that process, you'll be notified about that. But our water rates are based on, you know, basically the cost that it takes us to deliver that water. The wastewater is much more expensive because it's much more energy intensive. We don't have to treat drinking water because it's so pure that when it comes to us, we do have to add chlorine by law to make sure that it stays disinfected all the way through 600 miles of pipe. By the time it reaches your tap, we have to make sure it's clean and pure. But we don't do anything else essentially to the water. So we don't have to treat our current drinking water, but wastewater does go through a very expensive treatment process, a lot of energy involved and that sort of thing. So that's why the wastewater piece is so much more expensive. But the good news is every year we try to make sure our customers are aware that we're doing the setting what we call the sewer cap. So if you notice that in your bill insert, when it comes up late fall, early winter, that's a note to remind you that the amount of water you use during the rainy season in a month is assumed to be indoor use. And it's assumed that that indoor use is going to go to our wastewater treatment plant. So in those months, you want to really pay particular attention to how much water you're using, because that will then decide how much of the water you use each month also gets charged with sewage rate for the wastewater treatment. So just a tip to you, you know, as we get into fall, early winter, do look for those notices to remind you about that. The other piece of it that I wanted to let you know is that by the voters in California years ago opted to vote in a constitutional amendment to the California Constitution. I promise I'm not getting too far off track. I know you might be thinking, what does that have to do with my question? But that constitutional amendment is referred to as Proposition 218. And what it tells us is that we can only charge rates for our water and sewer based on the amount of water or sewer that exact site is using. So we're actually legally not allowed to subsidize the cost of water the way, say, PG&E can have their lifeline rate that save or that provide reduced rates for low income folks. So there has been some efforts on the state level to find a way to pass legislation that will allow water providers to provide a cost break for low income customers. We can't currently do that, unfortunately. However, if you or someone you know is very low income and really struggling with bills and with the cost of living, they can apply to our program because we did find a revenue stream that is not based on how much water we sell or how much wastewater we treat. It's based on renting some space for, I forget what they're called, but basically sort of like relay stations for phone and that sort of thing. So that we can use. So we do have a subsidy that can be used to help our low income customers. So if you or someone you know might need help with your water bill, we do encourage folks to go to our website and check it out and apply. It's called our Help to Others program, and I'll give you the website. So srcity.org, and then there's the /H, that's the letter H, 2, that's the number 2, O, that's the letter O, H2O. And that will bring folks to that webpage where they can then apply. And we have folks who are bilingual who can help. So if somebody is concerned that maybe English isn't their first language, no worries. The staff who help with this program are fully bilingual. So again, terrific question. Really glad you asked it. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. And Easter, do we have any other hands raised at this time?
We do not have any hands raised at this time.
All right, then how about we continue with the presentation? And Katie, do you want to introduce the next section?
Sure. So I will invite Xavier Arias to talk to us about some of our preliminary portfolios and ideas around combinations of water supply options.
Thank you, Katie. As Katie said, my name is Xavier Arias. I'm part of the Woodard and Curran team. And I just have a few slides tonight to give you a preview of what the team will be working on over the next couple of months. And the title says it well, it's portfolios. And the term is borrowed from the financial world where you might have a portfolio of investments. And so that's the way that I think the city has been thinking all along, is that we've looked at 18 options and we have the finalist options that Katie just talked to you about. But the thinking was not that we would just take the high scoring one and then go do that automatically. Now that process has given us a lot of insight, but the idea going forward is that we need to look at those options and think about ways to blend them so that we can meet the city's goals. And I think there's another slide that the next slide will cover this. The idea with a portfolio is it's usually a mix of different things. If you knew that somebody was, say, invested where all of their money was under their mattress, you'd say, well, that's not diversified. Maybe you should put some into stocks and some into bonds, or some into your savings account and some, on a higher risk investment, things like that. So similarly, the options that remain after the analysis, it's not that we pick a winner or even the top two necessarily. We can look at interesting ways to combine them. And the scoring that Katie showed need not be a strict ranking of, oh, this one's best for that. It's more like a way to think about which ones have strengths and weaknesses and might combine well to offset. So the strength of one might offset a weakness of another. And so we do think there will be some art, and we'll be looking for input as we go forward on that. One way to think about it on this slide, it says, you could think about a portfolio by looking at it through different lenses or these different values. You could say, just to sort of bookend it, well, what's the least cost approach? And let's think about what that portfolio would look like. Or what's the fastest way to do it? I'm really worried about getting this online. And so is there a portfolio that's really focused on speed of implementation? And then recognizing that some of these options cost quite a bit of money. Let's look at which portfolio would be most likely to be eligible for grant funding based on a range of criteria, for example, multi-benefit. Or there could be other organizing principles, including which one might be, say, most flexible if it turns out that future conditions change. So, which is a little bit of a teaser for the graphic that's on here is adaptive. We think that might be one of the good ideas, but I'll talk through these bookends on this slide. So minimalist, you could imagine a very simple portfolio that somebody might have a portfolio of one option even say, well, it's just extraction wells, or it's just water efficiency, or it's just repurposing an old well, or just stormwater recharge. It could be any of those options, but the minimalist might say, I keep it simple. Let's just do my favorite, and that's it. That's the minimalist theme. And you could build one or more portfolios in a minimalist mindset, or you could blend them. And that's where I think going in, we certainly thought this is probably how it works best is look at least a couple of options together and put them together. And of course, water efficiency, there's a lot of reasons why it's likely to end up in most or all of their portfolios, because it's something the city is committed to doing to some degree anyway. So the question is, well, do we ramp that up and make it part of the base? So that's likely. That's sort of a teaser. It's how we're thinking, is that we do end up with the portfolios coming back. We're likely to see water efficiency as part of all the portfolios that at least we throw out for initial review, but then we'd be looking for what else can we add that would work well with that. As an example of, complementing where strengths and weaknesses work together. Water efficiency has a lot of things going for it, but it doesn't maybe help with catastrophic interruption, because it's not really a new water supply per se. It's a reduction in what we need. So one of the other options could offset that and make water efficiency work even better. So that's the idea of blending. And then the most complicated one would be where you go adaptive, and you have another mix of options that are put into this kind of bowl here. That's what that funnel looks like. But not only do you mix them together, but also think about the timing of them and how they might play off one another as the future unfolds. So for example, we do something right out of the gate, like, well, maybe water efficiency gets started right away. One of the other ones, like purified water in this example on the screen, there's some regulatory issues that have to be worked through. It's also not the least expensive. So maybe we put it in the portfolio, but we don't start it right away. We let it germinate a little bit more. And we start something else that's less expensive and more of a proven technology earlier. So that's all compatible with a portfolio, just like a well-balanced financial portfolio might have a lot of things in there and might give you flexibility if conditions change. And that's what we're thinking would be the ideal portfolio. May well be one that has that level of flexibility built in. So this might seem abstract. So we do have one example. So the next slide will show, what if we started building a portfolio and we think about, well, what would it take, nuts and bolts, to just one option on the screen right now. And we're not being too specific, but say it's a groundwater element. So this could be GW1 or GW3, where we have to go figure out, where do these things go? And so there's a lot of steps that have to go into a project like that. And that has some adjustability built into it. I mean, it certainly gives you the ability to go through the process. And as we get more and more information, and this shows in, say, the year 2030, we get another chance to tweak it, and then 5 years later tweak it again. That's all good, but we can even make it better by blending another element into it. And if we click, you'll see we could blend it with another option. That other option actually gets an earlier start, requires less capital investment, could complement this. In this example, and it's just an example, it could complement the groundwater element nicely because of the fact that it's earlier start. They work together to add up to savings and aspects like that. So we're really at the beginning stages tonight. We just wanted to give you a preview of coming attractions that we're not taking those scores and just saying, here's the winner. We're trying to blend them creatively, and that's the portfolio concept. So I know that was a lot to digest, and I think it's just a few slides. We'd now like to get any questions or comments you have on portfolios.
Great. Thank you, Xavier. Any questions or comments on portfolios? And Easter, do you want to review how people could comment?
Yes, anyone wishing to ask a question, make a comment, or offer ideas can raise their hand in Zoom. And individuals participating in the meeting by telephone can dial *9 to raise their hand. And it does look like we have a question or comment here from Robin.
Great. Robin?
Actually, you never turned me off the last time, so. I
That's
don't
all
have a
right.
question on this, yeah,
Oh,
Thank
it's
you.
left over from the last time?
yeah,
Okay, no question on portfolios?
no,
Okay, anyone else perhaps have a question or comment they'd like to make at this time?
I do not see any other hands raised.
Okay, great. Well, then let's move along. Next, we have next steps, and I believe, is that Colin who will be presenting that?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Appreciate that.
Great.
So just a few next steps for folks. This is showing where we started and basically where we are and then where we're headed. So we do have quite a few meetings in the future. The water team, that's the city staff, is going to meet again. We also have a stakeholder group, and those are leaders of different organizations throughout Santa Rosa. They've been meeting together regularly. So they'll have another meeting. And our Board of Public Utilities will have meetings. These are always open to the public, and I'll show you the dates of these meetings in maybe the next slide, I think. Or this in a couple of slides, I'll show you those dates. We will also go to City Council, and those are also public meetings, and I'll show you the dates for those. And you're all welcome to attend and participate in public comment during those meetings as well. So as we move towards the completion of this project, our major next steps will be to have a working draft plan that we work with internally and with our stakeholder group, and then get it ready as an administrative draft to share with the community and the Board of Public Utilities, and then the City Council, and those will be study sessions so that we take quite a bit of time to walk through the plan, make sure everything is understood, take questions and comments. And then in October, we'll present the final plan to the board and to the City Council. So that's where we're headed. The final community meeting will be Monday, August 28th from 5 to 7. Once again, it will be on Zoom. And we'll update you on the project. And we'll walk through that water supply alternatives plan. So you'll see the draft portfolios having been refined. You'll see what they actually are going to be, what the different options are that the city could take, different paths forward we could take. We'll invite your comments and answer your questions, and we'll have live Spanish interpretation. When we get closer to that date, we'll have a registration link and we'll have a Zoom link. But if you received an email from me, I already have you on our email list, and I'll email you. So you do not have to re-register. You're welcome to, but you won't need to. So that'll be the next community meeting. And then again, additional opportunities. So the community meeting, August 28th. And then we'll go to our Board of Public Utilities. Folks can watch that virtually and participate virtually, or they can attend in person. August 3rd, we'll talk to our Board of Public Utilities about the study and the portfolios. And then September 21st, we'll do a study session on the draft plan. And then October 19th, we'll present the final plan. And City Council, again, it will be a hybrid meeting, so folks can participate via Zoom or they can attend in person. September 26th, we'll do a study session on the draft plan. October 24th, we'll present the final plan. In addition, you're welcome to email me at waterresources@srcity.org. And we'll take any comments or questions you have. If you are someone who prefers to mail things, you're always welcome to use the address shown on the screen and send it to my attention. We make sure that I can include any comments or questions you have and make sure they get to the project team. Again, the webpage for this project is srcity.org/ourwaterfuture. And that's where we'll have recordings and PowerPoint slides, information about upcoming meetings, etc. This meeting will get posted. I'm assuming it will be probably within a week to 10 days, sooner if possible. We will post this on that webpage. So if you wanted to review it or share it with others, it will be publicly available. With the holiday coming up, that does put a little bit of a delay in how quickly we can get that up, but we will get that up for you in a week to 10 days. So happy to share that with all of you. So at this point, this I think is our final Q&A spot. Is that right, Mark?
That's right. And thank you, Colin, for going through all that. That's really good. I want to see if we have any final questions from our audience. Easter, could you see if we do?
I do not see any raised hands in Zoom.
I will add one last comment then, just for the recording and then also for any of our participants. We will post documents on our webpage as well. So for example, we have posted the study parameters, the goal that we're setting out to achieve, how we did the study, that's already posted. And then once we've gotten to the point where we have the portfolio options finalized, those will get posted, as well as the draft plan that will also get posted. So if this is something you're interested in and want to keep track of, just know that as those things get closer to those public meeting dates, those documents will get posted for your review. Thanks, Mark.
Great, thank you, Colin. And can we go back to that last slide that has the dates and information on it? Perfect. Let's leave that up for a second. And since there are no further questions, I just want to take a moment on behalf of the City of Santa Rosa. I'd like to thank all of the members of the public who took the time out tonight to participate, and to all of our panelists, our interpreters, and the hosts for participating tonight. We appreciate you taking the time to listen to the presentation, provide your input on Santa Rosa's water future. And we hope that you can join us at the next Our Water Future community meeting, which will be held on Monday, August 28th. And be sure and check out the website for additional information. As Colin mentioned, that again is srcity.org/ourwaterfuture. And with that, I want to thank you all again, and I wish you a good night. Thank you.